Hello and welcome back to Firestorm Games, and in this video we're going to be looking at some more of the Death Guard releases, notably the Deathshroud Bodyguard. Now instead of doing a regular review or unboxing this time, I'm going to be doing some assembly of these miniatures. I'm going to be talking about the miniatures themselves, the kits, and also how well they build and things like that. So let's get started by assembling these Deathshroud. Now this kit comes with 3 sprues which allow you to produce 3 Deathshroud Bodyguard Terminators mounted on 40mm bases. Now each of those components on the sprues are individually numbered, and this is referenced in the instruction booklet. So when you're actually assembling your miniatures, you know exactly which component from the sprue you need, which saves an awful lot of time and confusion later on. The instruction booklet is also full colour and it's very clearly annotated as well, so you know exactly where you need to apply the glue, which components you need, which components are optional, and where you might not actually need to apply any glue for gluing the items together. In addition to all this, there is also some rules at the back of the instruction booklet, so you know exactly how you can build your miniatures without needing to have the actual codex to hand either. Now as this kit is plastic, I'll be using my regular plastic tools, which include some clippers, a hobby knife, which in this case I use a scalpel because I always find that the blades are a lot sharper. You do have to be a little bit more careful with these, however, that you don't accidentally cut yourself. And of course I'll be using some plastic glue as well. Now the instruction booklet is split down into 4 sections. It shows you how to assemble each of the 3 Deathshroud Bodyguard as well as a unit leader as well. Each section in the instruction booklet also references one of the sprues themselves, so all the components required to build one of the Deathshroud Terminators is located on a single sprue, which saves a lot of time, means you don't have to go looking through the entirety of the kit to find the component that you need. So whilst I'm assembling these Deathshroud, let's talk about the actual aesthetics of these kits themselves. The Deathshroud go all the way back to the pre-Horus Heresy, where they formed Mortarian's personal bodyguard. Back then they wore some modified Tartarus pattern power armour, but the equivalent armour that we're seeing on these miniatures here is slightly different. It's more influenced by the Catapracti style Terminator armour instead. I'm not entirely sure why this is the case, but it may be because the stocks of Tartarus pattern power armour have become destroyed or are very rare in the 41st millennium. Whilst our 40k Deathshroud are wearing different armour than their 30k equivalents, there are some similarities between the two. The most obvious of these being the Man Reaper scythes, which are very indicative of the Death Guard. In fact, Mortarion carries a much larger version of these scythes as well. A much more subtle similarity between the two is the segmented armour panelling that hangs between the Deathshroud's legs. This is definitely a throwback to their 30k equivalents. One detail that's very easy to overlook is the Plague Spurt Gauntlet. This is basically a weapon that sits on the back of the wrist of the Deathshroud and is essentially a auto-hitting pistol in the rules of 40k. Much like the other followers of Nurgle, these miniatures are covered in his gifts. This includes boils, pockmarks, tentacles, bony protrusions, and also the vents emanating from the back, which you've already seen on miniatures such as Typhus and Mortarion. These are belching out filthy smoke, which has flies inside the smoke itself. So now that we've come to assemble the champion of this unit, let's talk about some of the weapon options that we have in this kit. Now for the most part, these miniatures are single pose. They're more like 3 individual characters rather than actually being multi-part miniatures. However, there is some degree of customization in this kit. One of these areas is the heads. You get a number of different head options for each of the miniatures, so you could probably assemble quite a few of them and still have a few heads to mix and match between the 2 kits. In addition to this, there are also a few options which allow you to assemble one of your miniatures as either a regular Deathshroud or the unit champion. Not only do we get an additional Plague Spurt Gauntlet, but we also get a few alternate pieces. This includes the scythe head, also the shoulder pads and the front of the armour as well, with the champion's armour having a rictus grin across the stomach, protruding a large tongue and teeth. Now whilst these miniatures do have limited options, I don't think that the poses or the level of detail would have been quite as good if they were a full multi-part kit. And here you can see the fully assembled 3 Deathshroud, and that concludes our look at the new Deathshroud Bodyguard. So to conclude, these miniatures really are fantastic to look at. They're absolutely full of details, and their Nurgle aesthetic is really nice on these miniatures, especially with those huge size. It's also great to see a pre-heresy unit brought to life in the 41st millennium as well. So if you're looking to pick up a set of these for yourself, the RRP of these miniatures is £35. However, they're available on the Firestorm Games web store for £29.75, and I'll include a link in the description to them on the Firestorm Games website. You may have noticed that in the last few videos, our review format has changed slightly, and we're eager to hear what you guys think of the new changes. Also, make sure you subscribe to be kept up to date with all of our future videos. And finally, a huge thank you from us for watching this video, and we'll see you again on Firestorm Games.